Hope pushed open the front door of her Vancouver home, the faint jingle of her keys echoing in the stillness. It was a rare early day. Her boss had canceled a meeting, leaving her with a quiet Friday afternoon she hadn't expected. She'd pictured a simple night, a glass of Pinot, maybe a rom-com on the couch. Her arms ached from the grocery bag she'd hauled from the car. Fresh basil, pasta, a treat for herself after a grueling week. The house felt too quiet at first, an unnatural hush that pricked at her senses. Then she heard it, laughter drifting down from upstairs, light and carefree, slicing through the silence like a blade. Two voices, one deep, male, achingly familiar, the other soft, female, with a giggle she'd known since it was a child's squeal. Her heart thudded hard against her ribs as she set the bags down, the basil scent sharp in her nose. She climbed the stairs, each step deliberate, dread pooling in her stomach like cold water. Her palms slickened with sweat, her breath shallow. The bedroom door hung ajar, a sliver of golden light spilling into the dim hall. She nudged it wider with trembling fingers and froze, her world tilting. There stood Chiara, her younger sister by 3 years, wrapped in Hope's emerald silk robe, the one Nico had bought her for their 5th anniversary. Chiara's dark hair was tousled, her cheeks flushed. Behind her, Nico emerged, Hope's husband of 6 years, shirtless, a towel slung low on his hips, his dark curls damp. He looked casual, unbothered, like this was his routine, not a crime scene. "Hope," Nico said, his voice sliding into that smooth, practiced tone he used when he'd forgotten an anniversary or dented her car. "You're early." Chiara's hazel eyes widened, a flicker of shock crossing her delicate features, but she recovered fast, her lips trembling. Not with guilt, Hope realized, but with defiance. "We didn't mean for you to find out like this," she said, stepping closer to Nico, her voice steadying. "But we're in love." Hope's throat closed up, words choking her like dry sand. The ring on her left hand burned against her skin, a lie she'd worn too long, a promise turned to ash. She yanked it off, her fingers shaking, and let it fall. It hit the hardwood with a sharp clink, a cold, metallic sound that echoed in the stunned silence, like a gunshot signaling the end. They didn't apologize, didn't flinch, just stared as if she'd interrupted their love story, not shattered hers. She stumbled out, legs unsteady, and drove to her parents' house in a haze, tears blurring the headlights on the road. Her mother, Sophia, opened the door, her warm smile vanishing as she took in Hope's wrecked face, her mascara-streaked cheeks. "I caught them," Hope whispered, voice breaking. "Chiara and Nico in our bedroom." Sophia's sigh was heavy, resigned, as she closed the door and led Hope to the kitchen. Her father, Matteo, sat at the table, nursing a coffee, his weathered face unreadable. "You've always had everything," Sophia said, her tone laced with something bitter. "Chiara deserves happiness too. She's fragile, you're strong, Hope." "You always have been." Hope stared, disbelief cutting deeper than the affair itself. "Everything," she rasped. "I gave her everything, money for rehab, time when she fell apart, my trust. And you're defending her." Matteo stayed silent, his eyes fixed on his mug, offering no defense, no comfort, just the same quiet retreat he'd mastered over decades. Her family had chosen sides, and it wasn't hers. The divorce came fast, brutal, a guillotine on her old life. Nico demanded the house Hope had designed, every tile, every light fixture her vision. Chiara claimed the furniture, her grandmother's antique mirror, the wedding china Hope had picked out with such care. Her parents urged her to let go gracefully, their voices dripping with pity she didn't want. She signed the papers alone in a sterile office, her lawyer's eyes soft with sympathy, and moved into a dingy apartment with flickering lights. She watched through social media as Chiara and Nico settled into her old life, posting photos from her kitchen, her porch. They didn't just take her husband, they took her home, her family, her past, leaving her with nothing but echoes. But one night, unpacking in the dim glow of a single bulb, she found an old box under a pile of clothes. Inside, a worn notebook with a red elastic band. Her dream business plan from years ago, scribbled in her bold, hopeful hand. She flipped it open, her breath catching at the sight of her own ambition. Haven Consulting, a vision for branding women-owned startups. A flicker of something reignited in her chest, not just anger but purpose. They thought they'd erased her, snuffed out her light. They were wrong. She wasn't done, not by a long shot. Hope's new apartment was a hollow shell, peeling beige paint on the walls, a faucet that dripped in a maddening rhythm, a bare mattress shoved against the corner of the room. She didn't cry, the tears wouldn't come, locked somewhere deep where she couldn't reach. She sat on the floor most nights, eating cold soup from a can with a plastic spoon, the metallic tang sharp on her tongue. She stared at the blank walls, replaying the betrayal in vivid, punishing detail. Nico's MBA, she'd funded it with double shifts at a call center and late-night freelance gigs, her eyes burning from exhaustion. Chiara's rehab after her overdose. Hope had paid the bills Sophia deemed too expensive, sat through 3 sleepless days of withdrawal, holding her sister's trembling hand while their parents slept soundly miles away. She'd built their dreams brick by brick, and they'd walked off with the whole damn house. One sleepless night, the silence of the apartment pressed in too hard, the city's hum outside a taunting contrast. She dragged an old box from the corner, dusty books, crumpled receipts, a scarf she'd forgotten, and at the bottom she found it, a spiral notebook, its red elastic band frayed from years of neglect. She opened it, her breath hitching. Her handwriting spilled across the pages, messy and passionate, full of a hope she barely recognized. Haven Consulting, a detailed plan for branding and strategy aimed at women-owned startups. She'd written it at 23 before Nico's proposal, before Chiara's crises swallowed her life. A vision of freedom, impact, a legacy of her own. She laughed, a cracked, brittle sound that echoed in the empty room, tracing the words with her fingertips. Who was that girl, so fierce and unafraid? Her ancient laptop sat on the folding chair she'd scavenged from the curb. She plugged it in, the cord fraying, and waited as it whirred to life, the screen flickering like a heartbeat. She opened a browser, hands trembling, not with fear but with a spark she hadn't felt in years, and typed Haven Consulting into a business registration form. Her finger hovered over submit, then pressed down. Confirmation email pinged, a small victory in the dark. Weeks blurred into months, a haze of determination. She worked from a co-working space downtown, sipping bitter instant coffee in a corner while Chiara and Nico planned their engagement, their smug selfies flooding her old feeds. Haven Consulting grew. 4 clients by the end of year 1, women with startups teetering on the edge, grateful for her steady hand. By year 2, she had 40, her name whispered in small business circles. By year 3, investors Nico had once chased with sweaty palms were calling her, impressed by her quiet power. No flash, just results that spoke louder than any billboard. One rainy night, the sound of water tapping her window like a metronome, she pulled a shoebox from her closet, a relic she'd avoided. Inside, a wedding photo, Nico's arm around her, Chiara smirking in the background. A torn letter from Chiara promising, "I'll always be here," that emerald silk robe now a taunt. She lit a match, the flame small but fierce, and watched it devour the past, the smoke curling upward in thin tendrils. "I died in their story," she whispered, the words rough against her throat, "but I'm rewriting it." She blocked them all, Nico, Chiara, Sophia, Matteo, cutting the ghosts loose with a few clicks. She wasn't just free, she was untouchable, a phoenix rising from ashes they'd scattered. Then an alert blinked on her phone. Matteo's estate, Villa Rossi, was up for private auction, debts unpaid, pride shattered under tax liens and bad loans. Hope didn't hesitate. Through a shell company, she placed the highest bid, her savings poured into the move. Paperwork arrived a week later, a manila envelope heavy with promise. She opened it, running her fingers over the gold-lettered keychain. Villa Rossi, property of H. Carson LLC. They'd taken her home, her life, now she'd taken theirs. The game was shifting, and she held the board, her pieces aligning in the shadows. Hope sipped her morning coffee, the bitter brew grounding her as she scrolled through emails in her penthouse office. Haven Consulting's inbox buzzed with new leads, but one message stopped her cold. An anonymous sender, v.rossi@gmail.com, with the subject, "You deserve this." Attached was an audio file and a note, "Check the paternity." She's lying. Her pulse quickened as she clicked play, the sound crackling through her headphones. Nico's voice came first, smug and lazy. "She'll never show up to the wedding, ruin the vibe, you know?" Chiara's laugh followed, sharp and cruel. "She's pathetic, crying after the divorce." I almost felt bad, but she brought it on herself. Then a third voice, clipped, familiar, cut in, "Got it?" Hope's breath caught. Valentina, her cousin, ostracized by Sophia years ago for tainting the Carson name with her wild streak. She typed back, fingers flying. "Valentina? Is that you?" The reply pinged instantly. "You stood by me when they didn't. Now it's my turn." Chiara's lying, about the baby, maybe more. "I've got proof. Meet me." They met the next day at a dim cafe downtown, the kind with chipped mugs and no pretension. Valentina slid into the booth, her leather jacket creaking, her dark eyes sharp with purpose. She pushed a USB drive across the table, recordings, receipts, a DNA kit in a sealed bag. "She's claiming Nico's the father," Valentina said, voice low. "But I heard her with Luca, her ex, last month at a bar. She's playing him, said it's his kid, not Nico's." Hope's mind raced, pieces clicking into place. "Why help me now?" Valentina leaned forward, her gaze steady. "You were my sister when she wasn't, defended me when Sophia cut me off. I've been waiting to return the favor. Let's end this charade." They spent hours strategizing, gathering evidence, audio of Chiara's taunts, timestamps of Luca's late-night visits to her old house, the paternity test kit ready to deploy. Hope insisted it wasn't for revenge, her voice firm. "It's for truth, for me, for what they took." But inside, a fire simmered, fueled by every lie she'd swallowed. She clutched the USB, its weight grounding her as they parted ways, Valentina's parting words lingering. "They'll never see it coming." That night, alone in her penthouse, she listened again, each word a dagger twisting deeper. Chiara's mockery, "She'll never recover," and Nico's laughter, "We're the power couple now," burned into her. They'd mocked her pain, erased her from their narrative, built their fairy tale on her broken back. But now she had the tools to dismantle it, brick by smug brick. Villa Rossi's keys glinted on her desk, her first move already in play. The truth would be her second, a quiet blade she'd wield with precision. She leaned back, the city skyline sprawling beyond her window, and let the plan solidify. They thought they'd won, but the cracks were forming, cracks she'd widen until their world collapsed. Hope's phone buzzed on her desk one crisp morning, an alert from a local wedding blog she'd never followed. Chiara Rossi and Nico Blake to wed at Villa Rossi in elegant spring ceremony. Her childhood home, the sprawling estate she'd reclaimed, rented out for their big day under Matteo's name, or so they thought. She stared at the screen, her coffee cooling beside her, the photo of Chiara in a white gown and Nico in a tux stirring a cold resolve in her chest. They didn't know she owned it now, assumed it was still their family's pride. The irony was delicious, a secret she savored. A week later, an invitation slipped through her apartment's mail slot, ivory cardstock, gold script curling across it. "You are cordially invited to the wedding of Chiara Rossi and Nico Blake, Villa Rossi." A mistake, surely, or an act of arrogance from Chiara, a taunt to rub salt in the wound. Hope traced the words, her lips twitching into a faint, steely smile. She grabbed a pen, scrawled "attending" on the RSVP card, and mailed it back, imagining their faces when they saw it. Let them squirm, let them wonder. She called her lawyer, Elise, that afternoon, her voice calm but edged with intent. "Let them rent Villa Rossi," she said, leaning against her kitchen counter, the city skyline framed in the window. They'll pay me to humiliate themselves. I want the contract airtight. Elisa's laugh crackled through the line. You're wicked, Hope. No, she replied, her tone steady. Just fair. They took my home, now they'll dance in it on my terms. She prepared meticulously, Valentina's evidence locked in a safe, her plan sharpening with every passing day. She drove to a boutique downtown, picking out a crimson dress, not loud or flashy but striking, the kind of red that demanded attention without begging for it. She added diamond studs, small but sharp, catching the light like her resolve. The wedding loomed, a date circled in her mind, her pulse steady despite the storm brewing inside. They'd stripped her life bare, now she'd take their moment, turn their spotlight into her stage. The morning of the wedding, she stood in her penthouse, earned through years of grit, not handed down like their privilege, staring at the skyline she'd come to love. She'd risen from a mattress on a stained floor to this, a sleek space with hardwood floors and floor-to-ceiling windows. Haven Consulting thrived, her name a quiet force in boardrooms across Vancouver. Now she'd face them, not as the broken sister they'd discarded, but as the woman they'd underestimated, a phoenix in red. She drove to Villa Rossi, the estate's iron gates creaking open under her key, a sound that echoed with ownership. Guests milled on the lawn in pastel suits and dresses, sipping champagne, oblivious to the shift about to come. Hope stepped out of her black sedan, crimson against their softness, her heels sinking slightly into the grass. Whispers followed like a breeze. Is that Hope? She looks different, stronger. She walked past Sophia, who froze mid-sip, her champagne flute trembling, past Matteo, his head bowed as always, past Chiara, whose face paled beneath her veil. Hope took a front-row seat, bride's side, where she'd once belonged, her presence a silent bomb ticking down. The ceremony began, the string quartet's notes floating over the crowd, and she waited, calm and coiled, her clutch resting lightly in her lap. This was her opening move, and she'd play it to perfection. The string quartet filled Villa Rossi's manicured lawn with soft, lilting notes, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows over the white chairs. Nico stood at the altar, his navy tuxedo crisp, his hands fidgeting as he glanced nervously toward Hope in the front row. Chiara glided down the aisle, her veil trailing like a ghostly shroud, fake tears glistening on her cheeks, a performance perfected over years of playing the fragile victim. Guests cooed, clutching their programs, but their eyes darted to Hope, a crimson shadow against the pastel sea, her presence an unspoken question mark. She sat still, counting the lies woven into Chiara's every step, her grip tightening on the small envelope tucked in her clutch. The officiant, a wiry man with a graying beard, began in a steady voice. Do you, Nico Blake, take Chiara Rossi to be your? Hope stood, her movement sharp and deliberate. Silence crashed down like a dropped glass, heavy and sudden, the quartet's bows faltering mid-note. Every head turned, eyes wide, breaths held. She stepped forward, her heels clicking on the stone path, her voice cutting through the hush with calm authority. Before they kiss the bride, there's something you all deserve to know. She pulled the gold-lettered key from her clutch, holding it aloft, the sunlight glinting off its surface like a beacon. This venue, Villa Rossi, belongs to me, she said, her tone even but resonant. You're standing on my property, celebrating with my money, in the house they stole from me after they took my husband, my home, my family. Gasps rippled through the crowd, a wave of shock breaking the stillness. Chiara's bouquet trembled in her hands, petals fluttering to the ground. Nico's jaw dropped, his confident smirk vanishing. You're lying, Chiara snapped, her voice cracking, high and shrill, her composure fracturing. Hope smiled, serene and unshaken, her eyes locking with her sister's. Am I? Check the deed. Enjoy the cake, it's delicious. The drinks are on me, too. She sat back down, crossing her legs, letting the truth sink in like a stone in still water. Murmurs grew, a restless hum, guests shifting in their seats, Sophia clutching her champagne flute so tightly the stem creaked, Matteo staring at the grass as if it could swallow him whole. Nico tried to laugh it off, a forced chuckle that died in his throat, but the officiant hesitated, thrown off script, his hands hovering over his notes. Hope watched, her pulse steady, her breath even. This was just the opening act, a crack in their perfect facade she'd hammered in with precision. Valentina's USB burned in her clutch, the paternity test envelope a quiet promise of more to come. They'd built their lie on her silence, her years of endurance. Now she'd break it with her voice, piece by calculated piece. The first crack had split their fairy tale wide open. She'd widen it until the whole illusion shattered, leaving them exposed in the rubble. She leaned back slightly, the crimson of her dress catching the fading light, and waited for the next move, her calm a weapon they couldn't disarm. Nico cleared his throat, forcing a grin that didn't reach his eyes, his hands shoved into his pockets to hide the tremble. "Let's move on, huh?" he said, his voice tight with strain, a plea disguised as confidence. The officiant nodded, uncertain, his fingers fumbling with the script as he resumed. "Do you, Nico Blake?" Hope rose again, her crimson dress catching the last rays of the sinking sun, aflame against the pale crowd. "Oh no, Nico," she said, her tone cool and cutting. "We're not done yet." She pulled the white envelope from her clutch, its simplicity a stark contrast to the chaos it promised, and handed it to him with a steady hand. "Open it," she said, her voice a quiet command. He frowned, his brow creasing as he tore it open, the sound of ripping paper loud in the stunned silence. His eyes scanned the contents, a paternity test, dated, signed, official, and widened, his breath hitching. "What the hell is this?" he muttered, his voice cracking. "It's for the baby Chiara's been dangling over you like a leash," Hope said, loud enough for the back row to hear, her words sharp as glass. "It's not yours, Nico." "She knows it, she's known all along." Crowd gasped, a collective intake of breath that sucked the air from the lawn. A champagne flute shattered somewhere, the tinkling crash punctuating the moment. Chiara shrieked, "Hope, stop! You're insane!" Her voice pitched high, desperate, but her eyes betrayed her, wide, guilty, darting to Nico like a cornered animal's. Hope turned to the guests, her gaze sweeping over their shocked faces, old neighbors, distant cousins, strangers in pearls. "She's lied before," she said, her voice steady, resonant. "Like she always has." Valentina stepped forward from the sidelines, her leather jacket creaking, phone in hand as she plugged it into the venue's speakers with a practiced flick. "Play it," Hope said, nodding to her cousin. Chiara's voice crackled through, clear and venomous. "She was so pathetic after the divorce, I almost felt bad. But she brought it on herself, didn't she?" Nico's laughter followed, low and cruel. "She'll never recover, too broken. We're the power couple now, babe." The words hung, raw and ugly, slicing through the room like a blade through silk. Guests froze, mouths agape, programs crumpling in clenched fists. An older woman in a lavender hat shook her head, muttering under her breath. A man in a pinstripe suit whispered to his wife, "He's pitching investors next week. Good luck with that now." Hope stepped closer to the altar, her heels sinking into the grass. "You humiliated me, mocked me, stole from me," she said, her voice low but unshaken. "Now you get to do it publicly with a soundtrack to match." Nico ripped off his boutonniere, hurling it to the ground with a snarl. "This is a setup. You planned this whole thing." Hope met his gaze, calm, unflinching, not angry, not bitter, just done. "No, Nico," she said softly. "You planned it, every lie, every laugh. I just lit the fuse you handed me." Truth unleashed chaos, guests shifting, whispering, staring at the couple with new eyes. Hope stood still, the storm breaking around her, her crimson silhouette a lighthouse in the wreckage. She'd pulled the pin, and now their world was detonating piece by smug piece. The ceremony collapsed like a house of cards in a gust. Guests stood, some storming toward the exits, their heels clicking furiously on the stone path, others turning to Sofia and Matteo with hissed accusations. An investor, Johnny, a broad man in a tailored gray suit, approached Nico, his voice low but firm. "We're pulling the deal, Blake. This isn't the image we invest in. Chaos and lies don't sell." He shook his head, brushing past Sophia, who rushed forward, her champagne sloshing over the rim of her glass. "Wait, please," she pleaded, her voice shrill, grasping at a dream slipping away. "She's exaggerating. It's not what it looks like." Johnny didn't turn back, his broad shoulders disappearing into the crowd. Sophia's face crumpled, her hands trembling, but it was Matteo who broke the silence, his voice a gravelly whisper that landed like thunder. "What have you done, Chiara?" He stood slowly, his chair scraping the stone, his weathered face etched with a pain Hope hadn't seen since her grandfather's funeral. Chiara spun, her veil askew, her eyes wide with disbelief. "Daddy," she gasped, reaching for him, but he walked away, head bowed, his silence louder than any rebuke, the second betrayal reversed in a single heavy step. Chiara clutched Nico's arm, her manicured nails digging into his sleeve, her veil slipping to reveal mascara-streaked cheeks, but he shook her off, his face red with fury and panic. "Is it true?" he demanded, his voice rising, cracking at the edges. "The baby, is it mine or not?" She stammered, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. I didn't," she started, but the words drowned in her own desperation. He turned to Hope, his eyes wild. "You planned this. You set us up to fall." Hope nodded, serene, her crimson dress catching the fading light like a warning flare. "You gave me the pieces, Nico," she said, her voice soft but unyielding. "I just put them together for everyone to see." Security emerged from the hall, 3 men in black vests, prearranged by Hope days ago through Elise. She nodded to the lead, Marco, a burly man with a steady gaze. "Escort them out," she said, her tone calm but final. "They're trespassing on my property now," Nico argued, his voice a ragged shout. "This is insane. You can't do this." But no one listened. Chiara swayed, her bouquet dropping to the grass, her knees buckling as Marco gently but firmly took her arm. Guests parted like a sea, watching as the couple was led away, dazed, disgraced, their fairy tale unraveling in real time. Hope lingered, the air settling around her, the hum of the crowd fading to a stunned murmur. She walked to the edge of the lawn, gazing at Villa Rossi's ivy-covered walls, the house reclaiming its silence. The unraveling was complete, not loud, not violent, but absolute, a quiet implosion she'd orchestrated with precision. She'd turned their stage into her courtroom, their lies into her verdict, stripping away the masks they'd worn so proudly. She stepped onto the porch, the crimson of her dress a stark contrast to the white chairs, and breathed deeply, free at last, not just from them but from the weight of their betrayal. The game was over, and she'd rewritten the rules. The next morning dawned soft and still, the sky over Vancouver a pale blue streaked with pink. Hope sat on her penthouse rooftop, a steaming mug of coffee warming her hands, the city sprawling below her like a promise kept. No reporters swarmed, no headlines blared, just the quiet hum of a world that didn't yet know it had witnessed a reckoning. Villa Rossi stood empty, its gates locked, the echoes of yesterday's chaos fading into the grass. Chiara and Nico had vanished. Rumors swirled of a screaming match in a hotel lobby, unpaid bills piling up, their perfect facade crumbling under the weight of their own lies. Her phone buzzed with a call from Valentina, her voice light with a rare warmth. "You did it, Hope," she said, the sound of traffic faint in the background. "They're done, finished. Social media's buzzing, but they've got nowhere to hide." "We did it," Hope corrected, leaning against the rooftop railing, the cool metal grounding her. "Thank you for the audio, for everything. I couldn't have pulled it off without you." "Family sticks together," Valentina replied, a smile in her tone. "The real kind, not the ones who stab you in the back." Sophia texted once that afternoon, a curt message that flashed on Hope's screen. "How could you do this to us?" Hope stared at it, her thumb hovering over the reply button, then blocked her without a word, the last tie severed with a quiet swipe. Mateo's silence held as it always had. No apology, no defense, just the absence she'd grown used to. Haven Consulting boomed, her inbox flooded with new clients, women inspired by whispers of her stand at the wedding. Her name now a beacon for those clawing their way back from ruin. She heard through the grapevine that Nico's business pitch had tanked. Johnny's firm pulled out, followed by 2 others, his reputation shredded in the fallout. Chiara's pregnancy unraveled too. No baby bump appeared, no doctor visits confirmed, just another lie exposed when a mutual friend posted a confused congrats online and got silence in return. Hope tended her rooftop garden that evening, lavender blooming in neat rows, a nod to the piece she'd carved out, petal by fragile petal. They'd taken everything once, her home, her husband, her family's love, but she'd built more, a life forged in the fire of their betrayal. She sat on a cushioned bench, the city lights twinkling below, and let the aftermath settle around her. It wasn't triumph that filled her, not the loud, crowing kind, but a steady clarity, a quiet strength she'd earned. She'd survived their fire, sifted through the ashes, and shaped something new, something hers. Penthouse, the garden, Haven, these were her victories, not their defeat. She sipped her coffee, the warmth spreading through her chest, and knew she didn't need their regret to move forward. The aftermath was hers to define, and she'd do it on her terms, brick by unbroken brick. Months later, a gossip blog pinged Hope's phone. Chiara Rossi and Nico Blake split amid wedding scandal. She skimmed it over breakfast, her toast untouched, the words blurring into background noise. Accusations of infidelity, financial ruin, a public unraveling. She felt no thrill, no smug satisfaction, just a faint detachment. Valentina texted a photo an hour later. Chiara, haggard in a pawn shop, selling a gold necklace Hope recognized from their grandmother's collection, her face drawn with desperation. Another rumor placed Nico in Calgary, pouring drinks at a dive bar. His charm faded, his tailored suits traded for a stained apron. Their fairy tale had turned to dust, scattered by the wind of their own making. Hope expanded Haven Consulting, hiring women like her, scarred but resilient, their dreams battered but alive. She bought a second property, a cabin by Lake Okanagan, its cedar walls and glass windows a sanctuary she escaped to on weekends. One crisp evening, she found an old photo in a drawer. Her, Chiara and Nico at a picnic years ago, smiling under a summer sun. She stared at it, the edges curling, then carried it to the cabin's fireplace. The flames licked it slowly, the smoke curling into the starry sky above. "I don't need you," she whispered, the words rough against the crackle of the fire, her breath fogging in the cool air. Sophia's number flashed on her phone a week later. A rare call, quickly blocked again before it could ring twice. Mateo's estate debts piled higher. Villa Rossi stayed hers, its keys a quiet trophy she kept in a drawer. The final echo of their betrayal faded, drowned by the steady hum of her rise. Haven's revenue doubled, her team grew, her name carried weight in circles Nico could only dream of now. She walked the cabin's dock one night, the lake lapping softly at the wood, and felt the shift complete. She wasn't their shadow anymore, wasn't the sister they'd pitted or the wife they'd discarded. She was the light, burning bright on her own terms. She leaned against the railing, the water reflecting the moon, and let the past slip away like ripples on the surface. They'd tried to break her, to bury her under their lies, but she'd climbed out, stronger, sharper. The final echo wasn't theirs, it was hers, a quiet song of survival that played on her lips as she turned back to the cabin, her footsteps steady on the path she'd carved alone. A year later, Hope stood atop Haven Consulting's new office tower in downtown Vancouver, the glass walls reflecting the city's skyline like a mirror of her resolve. Company's profits had soared 30%, her team, a mix of fierce women and a few good men, thrived under her steady hand. Villa Rossi became a retreat for her clients, its ivy-covered walls hosting workshops for women rebuilding their lives, a symbol of reclaiming what was lost. She wore no rings, no masks, just a quiet strength that settled into her bones, a power earned through every scar. Nico emailed once, a late-night plea for forgiveness. "I messed up, hope, please talk to me," sent from a bar's Wi-Fi, judging by the typos. She deleted it without a reply, her finger hovering over the trash icon for only a heartbeat. Chiara's last social media post, a grainy selfie caption starting over needs support, flopped, ignored by all but a few pity likes, her followers dwindling to nothing. Sofia and Matteo faded into obscurity, their legacy sold off to cover debts, their calls to hope unanswered, their voices lost to the wind. She'd built a penthouse filled with lavender pots, their purple blooms a tribute to her new peace, and the lake cabin became her weekend haven, its silence a balm. She posted a photo one evening, herself atop the tower, wind tugging at her hair, captioned, "They broke me. I built higher." Likes flooded in, thousands from clients, staff, strangers who'd heard her story, but she stepped away from the screen, coffee in hand, and walked to her rooftop. The city glittered below, indifferent to her wars, and she breathed it in, the air cool against her skin. She'd crashed their wedding, their lies, their world. Not for revenge, not for applause, but for herself, to reclaim the ground they'd stolen. She smiled, not for them, not for the past, but because she'd learned the truth. She'd never needed them to begin with. She sat on the bench, the lavender swaying gently, and let the wind move through her hair. Her foundation was hers alone, unshakable, built from the ashes they'd left behind. Haven wasn't just a business. It was her testament, her legacy, a beacon for anyone who'd been broken and dared to rise. She sipped her coffee, the warmth spreading through her, and knew this was enough. Not their regret, not their ruin, but her own quiet victory, steady and whole.